Hey, how's it going guys? Jack and Matt here with the Toasty Bros, and today we're going to be putting the GTX 970 to the test in 2022. Can it still game and is it still worth the buy?
You can pick up a GTX 970 for a pretty good price right now in the used market. Is it actually worth that price though? Well, we're about to find out with some testing, but first a word from today's sponsor.
Today's video is brought to you by Team Group and their T-Force Cardata Z44Q Gen 4 SSD, which is built on the latest QLC NAND and features speeds up to 5,000 megabytes per second read and 4,000 megabytes per second write, and comes with an extra heatsink for those who want maximum cooling, along with a 5-year warranty and capacities up to 4 terabytes. Whether you're building a new gaming or workstation PC or upgrading your current system, you should consider the Team Group T-Force Cardata Z44Q Gen 4 SSD for your next PC build. Check the link down below to learn more, and special thanks to Team Group for sponsoring today's video.
So if you guys are new to the channel, we often do these test videos where we throw in a graphics card and keep the specs of the system the exact same so we have really good benchmark comparisons. This beautiful CG540 from Deepcool, big thanks to them for sending this over. We have the Ryzen 5600G, which is a 6-core 12-threaded APU, but we're technically just running it as a CPU since we have a dedicated graphics card in here. We also have a nice Asus TUF B550. We have 16 gigs of PNY Accelerate, 3600 megahertz RAM, and on top of that we have an NVMe 512 gig SSD, so nothing can really slow the system down. And now I'm going to kick it off to Matt to go and give you guys the actual specs of this beautiful graphics card.
Now the GTX 970 has an interesting history. One, because it claims to have 4 gigs of VRAM, but on its launch there was a discovery that it only has 3.5 gigs. So kind of a weird thing about the 970, but it is still a very capable card, and let's read off some of the main specs you may want to consider. It does have that 4 gigs of DDR5 memory. It has 1,664 CUDA cores, and it is based on Maxwell 2.0. 9000 series is still pretty relevant nowadays. The 980 and 980 Ti go for pretty decent prices on eBay. I've seen 970s go for around 200 bucks or less, and with prices dropping as fast as they are, I wouldn't be surprised that when this video releases, that is well below $200. So definitely check the link down below if you want to pick up a 970 after you see the benchmarks. But yeah, we're gonna run a series of games that we test on all the graphics cards we throw in systems like this, just to show you guys what it's capable of doing at 1080p in 2022. So we're just not wasting more time and dive into those benchmarks.
Alright guys, now that we have the GTX 970 on the test bench, let's dive into some tests, shall we? Now the games we decided to test with the 970 are as follows, those being Apex Legends, Call of Duty Warzone, Forza Horizon 5, Cyberpunk, and Fortnite. First up in Apex Legends at 1080p on medium-low settings, we got an average of about 70 FPS. Now the 970 is a very interesting card because when it released the 900 series, it was one of the best value options. That doesn't mean it was a really cheap card, it was just a really good card that you could get at the mid-range level that could play pretty much any game you throw at. And as you can see throughout the benchmark run, it's held up pretty well. Yes, it only has 3.5 gigs of VRAM, but most of the games that we tested today really didn't show a major limitation from it being a quote 4 gig card. For the most part, it's a 4 gig card. Yes, it's missing a little bit of VRAM, but there's really not anything that's going to be that big of a difference compared to 3.5 and 4 gigs that's going to make you want to go with something like a 584 gig over the 970. But in games like Apex that are pretty GPU dependent, getting 70 to 80 FPS on medium-low settings is pretty good to see. Again, it all depends on what CPU you're pairing it with, if you're going to run more low settings than medium-low settings. And the whole point of this series that we're doing is to show you what is the best placeholder option when you want to upgrade to a better graphics card in the future. And when you're spending about 200 bucks right now on a 970, you're definitely putting more money into a placeholder card than you probably would have if you're on a really tight budget like we've done with something like a 760 or 950, but it just goes to show that it's still a very capable card even if you want to use it long term with your new PC build. Next up in Warzone at 1080p on low settings, we actually got 60 to 70 FPS. Yes, it's not a high refresh rate gaming experience and it's not going to look the prettiest, but you can get a constant 60 to 70 FPS in a game like Warzone, and you will have driver support. The one thing that we've noticed a lot throughout this series is going with like 700 series or older cards from Nvidia, you're not going to get that driver support, and even if the card is physically really high end, it's just not going to keep up in games that get continual updates like Call of Duty Warzone and need the driver optimization to make sure it gets a, well, steady 60 plus FPS. So I definitely give Warzone a pass. It was more than playable than I honestly thought it was going to be. Warzone is normally the game that causes a lot of problems with older GPUs, but with a 970 and just some modern like quad core processor, you still probably can get a 60 to 70 FPS experience. Next up, in Forza Horizon 5 on medium settings at 1080p, we ran that built-in benchmark and got an average of 58 FPS. This is a very interesting number because we recently picked up a PC from Hardware Swap, the subreddit, and it had a 1650 Super in it, and we got the exact same average numbers on Forza Horizon 5 medium settings using the built-in benchmark. So I would say nowadays with driver optimizations, you're probably looking at a card that's pretty equivalent to a 1650 Super if you are looking to buy those new. And buying those new right now, you're looking well over $200. So you're getting a lot of value for money here, picking this up at $200 or less. Yes, it is an older card. It is 900 series. It has a lesser NVENC encoder and all that sort of stuff. But in terms of raw GPU horsepower, it definitely keeps up. Now, of course, we're going to start throwing in a game that's really going to push this thing to its limits and probably not going to make it look really good, but that game is Cyberpunk. Using the built-in benchmark on low settings, we get an average of 43 FPS. It's cool to see that we get close to 60 FPS. This thing's not like running in the 20s or 10s, so you absolutely have no chance of playing a game like Cyberpunk, but you could go 1600 by 900 or 720p, and I would bet you would get a 60 FPS experience, but doing so would make it more CPU reliant, and we like to keep these tests as GPU dependent as possible, so we don't really rely too much on the 5600G, so you can have a decent idea of, well, what kind of performance you would get if you're just throwing this thing into a system with an older i3, or whether you're running like a 3600 or 5600X. We want to get some comparable results. Now, of course, I couldn't finish the benchmark run without testing Fortnite because you all like to see Fortnite. And on epic view distance, everything else on low, we got an average of 120 FPS. Once again, my disclaimer with Fortnite is when we're running on performance mode or lower settings, it is very CPU dependent. But there are people out there who are getting CPUs like a Ryzen 5 5600X that absolutely need a dedicated graphics card to even work. And if you get a 970, these are the numbers you'll end up with. So yeah, let me know down below what you think of the 970. I'm still very impressed with the card. The model we got was a blower style PNY card, and it's not the greatest. It does run hot, sometimes 80 degrees Celsius, but there are other models that you can buy at around 200 bucks on eBay, and I think at that price point, it's still a very good pickup. And definitely stay tuned for when we'll be doing a budget PC build featuring this 970, and it's going to be in a very interesting enclosure, so stay subscribed for that one. But yeah, 970, definitely a good card and a great placeholder option if you have the budget for it. Now that we finished the benchmarking section of today's video, how about I bring Jackson back in here to wrap this video up real quick.
Alright guys, so we just got done benchmarking this GTX 970 in our typical game lineup, and to kind of give you guys a comparison to a more modern card, this card performs pretty similar to a 1650 Super 4GB, which is a pretty well-known and pretty good card, and right now those cards are typically going for over 260 bucks, so if you can get this for like the $150 to $200 range, this might actually be a pretty good buy for you.
So if you want to pick up this graphics card after watching those benchmarks, check the link in the description down below. They will be affiliate links and will help us out. We also have links to this test bench if you happen to like the case, the RGB RAM, and all the stuff that we use for this test bench. Those links will be affiliate links down below as well.
So as always, we hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, check out our other two YouTube channels and also our twitch.tv/ToastyBros, and do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
And we'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.
And these benchmarks are really awesome. We also have some benchmarks at our PC selling business, PCBros.tech, where we actually test all of our PCs before we ship them.
If you don't feel like hunting for a used graphics card, just buy a PC for a month over at PC Bros. Awesome high-end, mid-range, and budget gaming PCs at great prices. If you use code ToastyBros2 on checkout, you can save even more money. Check the link down below. PCBros.tech. See you guys later. Goodbye.